a double celebration today. 25 years of Armadacon. I don't know if there's anybody in the room who's actually been to all 25.
Yes.
Yeah, there are. Diehards who've been to all 25. Well done. Fantastic. And also, the launch of David's brand new book, Empire of the Dead. He's going to come and give us some readings from the book. And then partway through we'll have a break and we'll share some champagne and some cakes. Hooray! David. Welcome, David.
I knew champagne would get a bigger cheer. I've only been to half an Armadacon so far, Saturday, isn't it? I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, and I must say thank you very, very much for inviting me. And I'm really chuffed. The number of times I've dropped into conversation that I've guessed the honour of the convention. That's embarrassing. So, there we go. Yes, so when I was invited, I thought, can I get my book out in time to launch it at the convention? And well, yes, I did, which is rather brilliant. I'm on twice at the convention. Tomorrow I'm going to talk a bit more about writing and my other books, but I thought today was just a celebration of the book and a celebration of Armadacon 65, which is absolutely superb. So I'm now just finished 20 minutes before champagne. So I thought I'd do let's start by reading a minute, if that's all right with yourselves.
Cracking on.
This is a steampunk novel concerning three sisters who have been exiled to Switzerland for reasons that will come out in the backstory. It was during Latin that the Austro-Hungarians arrived with their dogs and zombies to kill everyone at the Eden College for Young Ladies. As the lesson started with the conjugation of amo, Miss Ernestine Deering Doolittle lifted her skirts and crossed the threshold into the east wing. This was the forbidden zone, protected by a thick rope spanning the wide corridor. An out-of-bounds site and, strongest of all, Miss Hardcastle's long lecture during assembly about expulsion. The shame such a punishment would inflict upon their families, and the commensurate decline in the marriage prospects of the disgraced young lady. And girls, I have turned off the heating. Ernestine's breath condensed in the still air. She longed to be expelled. She could bear the shame and didn't give two hoots for marriage. After all, she'd read Mary Wollstonecraft's A Vindication of the Rights of Woman. However, she would never be able to bring herself to explain such appalling disobedience to her two younger sisters, Georgina and Charlotte. Indeed, that very morning, she had given her two siblings a very stern lecture about the necessity for controlling their curiosity. They were here to study and not to go exploring. It had been Ernestine's burden as the elder sister to cut a trail for them to follow. She knew she was well suited with her sharp, angular features, her pragmatic common sense. Georgina was the beautiful one, with a lovely round face that was far too trusting, and Charlotte was simply pretty and frivolous. They were both so naive. Their looks, or others' reactions to their looks, insulated them from the ways of the world. So, she had raised a finger and had said clearly and firmly, "No more adventures!" And that's sort of how it starts.
Don't stop.
50p to continue, please.
Another 50p to continue.
Where do I start this one from? That's my place. Right, well, I'm skipping to Georgina, who's a little while later on. Ernestine has been exploring and has been, well, kidnapped, effectively. And Georgina has been attacked by zombies. Above, she's run outside. Above, a terrifying black shape dominated a worsting sky as a massive, ominous lump hung impossibly in the air. Huge propellers whined and complained, As they manoeuvred the bulk above her, the turbulence picked up the snow, falling and whipping it into huge spirals. This was the incredible object that had cast a shadow across the school earlier. There were distant shouts behind her, "Lassen Sie da, Hundlos!" And the mad barking of the dogs changed pitch suddenly. Beyond the arch was an open area, hidden by the wall, and then there was the tree line. Her boots disappeared into the drift with each step, and slip and stumble, who knew what. The hem of her long dress became soaked. The heavy snow leached into her petticoats, pulling her down. Cold water reached her toes, and it seemed icy fingers rose up her stockings. She went downhill, and suddenly a huge white arena opened up as she reached the frozen river. Slipping at first, she found a gate that worked and began running across the wide open space. She heard snarling and wrist glancing back. Huge dogs smashed through the undergrowth towards her. The three mastiffs stood around too, but their four legs were more stable, and so they pounded onwards, getting closer and closer all the time. Georgina ran, her lungs aching and forcing the cold air in and out. The middle of the frozen river was marked by a cut where the water still flowed. To her right, the river narrowed to stepping stones, and to her left, some way off, was the waterfall leading down to the valley. Which way? The dogs were nearly upon her. Georgina turned to run along the irregular channel, but the speed was too great. She slipped, fell, and hurtled towards the churning water, scrabbling as she slid to slow herself. The hunters realised the danger too. One squeal, as it paused, came up from under it, and it crashed into Georgina. Animal and human went into the water. The air slammed out of Georgina as the cold shocked her. The water frothed as the dog thrashed about. The other dogs tried to reach Georgina as she grasped the edge of the ice sheet. Her hands flew, and she tried to pull herself up towards the snapping, biting jaws. She knew that she had to get out of the freezing water, had to, but she couldn't, and slid back, pulled by the current under the ice. Deep breath. Above her, the two dogs clawed and attacked the thin, transparent sheet that protected her as she slipped away underneath. But I cut to Miss Charlotte, the third of the heroines. Miss Charlotte, as for the youngest of the Deering-Do sisters, Charlotte knew that Georgina would murder her, and far worse, Ernestine would disapprove. But Charlotte was on the Zeppelin when it took off. That's the end of the chapter. Hey. I'm an indie publisher. Very much so. I've spent quite a lot of time going to conventions and going to editors and agents and saying, well, like this, cap in hand, but please read my book. Publishing is about to be destroyed, traditional publishing, by the digital revolution. I'm sure you're all aware. The agent editors just aren't reading stuff now. And they're making exactly the same mistakes that we used to do. I do believe very much that traditional publishing is finished, they're dinosaurs. Some of them may evolve into birds and become a different thing. So I can't tell you that indie publishing is the future, but it's more or less the only way for an awful lot of people to get out there. So it's something I really would like to touch upon tomorrow when I talk. But the chance to, bring out a book and have people read it. I found my earlier book, and someone ran up to me at a convention when I was registering and said, "I read the book, brilliant." I thought, that's fantastic. I reached an audience. There's so many writers who are endlessly sending stuff off and not getting that wonderful experience. So, well, please read my books and tell me what you think of them, particularly if you like them. I think we'll do another little reading now. And for this one, I'd like to do something slightly different. Now I'm going to cast two of my heroines. Alison here will play Ernestine, come up here, and Dawn will play Georgina. I've got your script.
Gosh, how it came to us,
You okay?
Okay.
Various things have happened. Ernestine and Georgina have managed to link up together. They've discovered the secret plans of the Austro-Hungarians and are typhoiding it back across Europe in order to well, take the message to the British Empire and Whitehall and thus save everything. Things have not gone according to plan, and some Austro-Hungarian soldiers are on board the train that they are on, and there'll be some running about. I wonder if I should read this. Chapter 12, beginning at page 212. It sounds sort of slightly religious, doesn't it? It was dangerous. Not as dangerous as walking on top of a train travelling at an inconceivable speed of 50 miles an hour, but nonetheless, two young ladies holding on to each other while standing on an unstable platform, laughing uncontrollably, wasn't safe. But there were 3 soldiers on board, searching for them. Ernestine pulled herself out of her sister's embrace and checked the window into the restaurant. Travellers were sitting at tables, eating their meals. Waiters were serving, and she thought she could detect the wake of a disturbance. Without being able to put a finger on why, she was sure the soldiers had moved forward. They had plenty of time during the excursion on top of the train. The note of the engine changed, less chugging and more whirring.
We just need to delay until we're in France. Then they've no jurisdiction.
Georgina nodded her understanding.
Perhaps having searched the train, they'll give up.
Ernestine said, thinking aloud. Graf Zala knew she was on the train. He didn't strike her as a man who would give up. No doubt he instilled that same zeal into his men. What was that whirring noise? Ernestine climbed the ladder. She hooked her arm around the top rung before sticking her head above the roof. Despite being buffeted about and deafened by the roar of the wind, she could hear a distinctive mechanical noise. She'd heard it before. A light blinked at the front of the train. It was dusk now, so it was clear in the failing light, on, off, dot, dash, dash, Morse code. That was a D and an E, U. A jolt of the train caused her to lose focus for a moment. T. Who were they signalling to? No one lived in the sky. Above, the dark sky was blotted by a massive lodging shape. Why hadn't she looked up?
Zeppelin, we could signal and tell them to go away. Georgina, you've got your flashlight, and you know Morse. Yes, but I don't know German. Oh, well, do try and think, Gina.
The Zeppelin flared into activity as searchlights came on, cast about and then fixed on the train. One scanned along, and Ernestine was dazzled. She had to feel her way down. Georgina appeared smudged by an orange blur.
They saw me.
Ernestine said, blinking.
Should be too far away. They'll have binoculars. Oh my.
Above the noise of steam, airship and wind, there was a loud bang.
What was that?
Georgina asked. The percussion from the carriage's wheels changed in pitch and tempo, and the weak light shifted. The train rushed past a section of trees, suddenly billowing smoke, thick and yellow, which they had plenty of time to examine because Ernestine realised.
We're slowing down. Oh my! Gina, we have to get to the engine. I guess we're still in Germany. Yes. What about the soldiers? Oh, we'll have to gamble that they're coming back this way. But that'll mean we'll meet them. No, we'll never make it to the roof, going into the wind. Gina, don't be a baby. The train is slowing down, so it'll be much easier. But we're only just...
Ernestine hoisted her sister up the ladder and pushed. Following her as quickly as she could, the Zeppelin manoeuvred to straddle the railway line ahead, and then the giant airship tacked with its engines against the wind, losing altitude, to fly directly above the train. Even with the train slowing, the predominant airflow, highlighted with little tiny sparks from the boiler, blew straight into their faces. Leading, Georgina lurched onto her feet and, with a very strange gait, made her way forward. Ernestine pulled herself up too. Ahead, there was another explosion. Ernestine shielded her eyes from the glare of the searchlights, but could make out the gondola section beneath the huge frame of the Zeppelin. She could almost see figures silhouetted in the windows. One of them appeared in a door frame and held something like a model of an airship. He dropped it. The object seemed to hesitate in the air, staying horizontal. Then its fins came up, or rather the bulbous head dropped. It dinged, striking the head of the train somewhere between the dining carriage and the engine. It disappeared inside. Georgina threw herself flat, giving Ernestine an uninterrupted view. When the expected explosion came, it was a damp squib, loud and full of smoke. The crump was followed by a hissing as it threw up a billow of yellow smoke spreading out of the windows ahead, as if the front carriage was exhaling, after a long draw of a good cigar.
It's all right. It hit the train and didn't damage anything.
Georgina yelled, the rush of air buffeting her words.
It's just smoke.
Ernestine could see that.
Georgina, don't be foolish. Why would they mark the train with smoke? It smells like beef sandwiches. I beg your pardon. That yellow paste.
Ernestine could smell it too.
Mustard.
Georgina giggled. The train stopped, flinging Ernestine forward, and as she fell, the Zeppelin zoomed overhead. The airship's propellers churned the smoke from the steam engine's chimney. Winking lights appeared in the gondola, and the train was raked with bullets. The top of the roof pinged, and beams of light appeared, shining up from the bullet hole in the roof. Ernestine screamed.
Go!
They shuffled along the roof, going forward towards the nearest end as another volley went wide. The Zeppelin was closing again, dominating the view. Ropes fell from the gondola, and figures readied themselves to abseil down. As Ernestine went down over the edge of the roof, a few bullets ricocheted around the metalwork. They'd switched to snipers. Down on the metal platform, at the other end of the restaurant coach, they were completely hidden by the yellow smoke billowing on either side of the path.
It's strange.
Said Georgina, coughing.
It's just smoke.
Thank you. Are we ready at the back?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Armadacon bunnies will come and serve you your champagne.
It's a frightening concept. We've got another reading we'll do, but we'll have a little short break while we're going to have goodies at the back.
Ladies and gentlemen, please raise your glasses. First of all, to the success of David's new book.
Thank you.
And to all of you for making the last 25 years some of the most special moments in our lives. Without you, we couldn't have done it. So, Armadacon! I'd also like to thank Christopher and Jennifer, the two pretty bunnies, legendary, for providing the cupcakes and the champers. To Chris and Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you. I was asked why I was drawn to steampunk, and I've got a theory that we've lived through the golden age of writability. When people first gathered in caves and told each other stories over fires, they had an infinite number of stories, or 3 or 7 or 31, depending on which writing books you read. But they could only do stories about caveman, if you like. And then when we settled in, did agriculture, we had another set of infinite stories, slightly bigger. We could do the conflict between agriculture and hunter-gatherers and so forth. And then we settled cities, and there's another layer of stories that you can write. And this goes on as technology increases. So when you hit the Victorian age, you've got steam engines that mean you can write something set in Plymouth and London on the same day. You can have people going across the whole of Europe. You can have flying machines. There's lots of exciting things you can do. And I believe this carries on increasing until you get to the 60s. And then it starts to change. And I think it's partly around the introduction of mobile phones. I mean, any plot that involves that can be solved with a mobile phone doesn't work anymore. Romeo and Juliet, well, she'd just ring him up and send him a text, you know, I'm going to pretend to be dead, lol. And the story's gone away. You can see that in Star Trek. Do you think of Star Trek, the classic series, set in the 60s, if they have to fire the photon torpedo, they go to this desk over here, they press these buttons here, it's all very exciting, and they have to run over here to do the communication stuff. In the next generation, it's all, lovely. In the next generation, it's all apps. You can go to any console, solve it. It's become dull. With mobile phones, you know, shall we get out of our broken down car and go up that path to that scary looking castle where there's flickering lights at the top and scary noises? And the other bloke then says, well, no, the RAC man said to stay with the car.
Yeah.
There wasn't any signal in the middle of Transylvania.
Well, they've probably got better coverage than we have here.
There's
no signals in Somerset.
Ghost story
Do that in
set
Somerset.
in Dartmoor.
No hills
in Whitacombe.
and craggy mountains.
And he said the carrier couldn't get a mobile phone signal. And he said, would I read this story? And one of my comments back was, that's unbelievable. I don't buy that. We had to go on holiday in Dartmoor and stayed in the very pub he had written that story in. You can't get a mobile phone signal. I mean, it's real. But it doesn't work in narrative terms. So I think the thing about steampunk is all of the technology makes sense to you, doesn't it? You know what a steam engine is, even if you've never actually been on one. You know what a Zeppelin is. You know what you have to do to a steam engine to make it go faster. The steam scene we've just done. I mean, when I came up with the idea of a Zeppelin chasing a steam engine, I thought, oh, will that work? And then you have to look it up and you discover, yes, it does work. They do go up. The steam engine is slightly faster than a Zeppelin, but it can cut corners. If the steam engine is slowed down because no one's been putting coal in it, it's a very exciting kind of chase sequence. And I think it's obvious stuff. And I also like the steampunk movement politically. You know, that idea of building something to last and repairing it. I think we need that in this day and age. I'm not pretending this book is a political polemic on that sort of thing. It's interesting. Thank you. Anything else? Any more questions? No.
You mentioned about researching a Zeppelin chasing steam engine. Any other sort of research that you can share with us?
Well, having insulted the modern age as being tedious to write narratives in, I do find the fact that you've got Wikipedia. How fast does a steam engine go? I'm on that, really.
Probably slightly wrong.
Well, no, it isn't slightly wrong. They did some research on it, didn't they? And they found that
It doesn't depend on the steam engine, does it?
well, yeah, but 68, I'm guessing on these numbers now, but 68% of the facts in Wikipedia are correct. I mean, that's horrifying. And they compared it with the Encyclopedia Britannica, which scores 70%. And that's horrifying. That was a standard repository of knowledge, wasn't it? It's as accurate as the Encyclopedia Galactica, really.
Here's to the triple breasted ball.
Any other questions, or should we do another reading?
Do another reading.
Do another reading.
That's our third part. Do we get a discount?
Right, in this scene, I want you all got to play a part. I want you to imagine yourself eating nice cakes and champagne. Method acting for you. This is set after the wedding scene, so you're the wedding party. But Georgina and Captain Merriweather have gone to the Savoy for their honeymoon. And Ernestine had just found this back out. Now, I need to prepare you for a shock here. Basically, Ernestine is the elder sister, but Georgina has got married before her elder sister. I know, I'm a serious writer, I deal with adult themes. You know, you've got to face up to these things. Anyway,
Carry on, follow.
Ernestine finds out and does, well, the only thing she can do, which is to rush round and save Georgina from a fate worse than death. Which is this here.
The all-electric lift soon deposited Ernestine on the 8th floor. Room 802 was very nearby, and Ernestine marched to the door, turned the knob, and went straight in. The cosy bedroom had a huge bed, a few other pieces of furniture beside the bed, and there were flowers on the bedside cabinet, and the bed was made up with fresh white bed linen along with bedding, and a man's pyjamas on one side of the bed, and a woman's night attire on the other side of the bed. What was her sister thinking, being alone in a room with a man and a bed? It was indeed lit by electricity, and the lights were on, but there was no one home. Perhaps she thought they might be... The latch opens on another door, and a deep male voice preceded a figure. Ernestine did the only thing she could do, and hid in the wardrobe.
So,
It was Captain Merriweather. Clearly he had survived capture in Strasbourg and managed to reach England.
Yes, dearest.
Do you want...
Ernestine was incensed. Now a darling from him?
Whatever you think is best, dearest.
Oh, right.
Dearest?
I'll wait outside for a short while.
Don't be long.
Ernestine heard the main door open and Merryweather leave, followed by that irritating humming that Georgina did when she was happy. Now was the time to emerge and tell Georgina exactly what Ernestine thought of this outrageous... Only Ernestine wasn't at all sure what she thought exactly. There was a rustle of bedclothes. Silence. Well, she wasn't going to stay in the wardrobe all night. She'd spent far too much time in confining wooden boxes recently, and best not to leave her. A knock at the door.
Come in, dearest.
The door creaked, much as Ernestine's curled-up knees threatened to echo.
Ah, yes, darling.
There was some... What was that? The famous electrical illumination of the Savoy went out. It was dark at first, but then Ernestine saw that the slice of light from the gap between the doors had simply changed colour. No longer the bright and unearthly orange, but a softer bluish tone caused by light from the window.
Dearest, may I look?
Darling, of course.
Oh, my word.
There was something sharp sticking up in Ernestine's back. Maybe a parasol.
Good heavens. Is it supposed to do that?
Perhaps we should start with a kiss, darling.
Of course.
I meant on your lips rather than your hand.
Oh, sorry, dearest.
Oh, that was it. Ernestine was going to... Oh, that was sharp. If she could get up, and they weren't even engaged. They were married.
You can take your hand down, darling.
Sorry, dearest, of there.
They probably were allowed to kiss on the lips. And they hardly knew each other, which made little difference, but even so, perhaps she could offer to be their chaperone.
Darling, I'll just...
Of course. Oh.
The issue, perhaps, and Ernestine felt guilty about this, was that she'd kissed Peter on the lips. Well, he'd kissed her, but she'd let him. Or rather, she hadn't stopped him. But then she hadn't known what he was going to do until it was too late if he had. So, in effect, she missed it, which was doubly cruel of him.
Dearest,
Georgina simpered.
could you perhaps stop being so gentle and do whatever it is that you're supposed to do?
Sorry, darling.
Sorry.
Her sister was slurring her words now. She'd probably drunk a lot of wine, thinking she was a proper adult now she was married, but she was only 17. Georgina started again.
Kent? Surrey?
Sorry?
No, Surrey.
I beg your pardon.
Kent, Surrey, Dorset, Essex, Sussex, Middle, oh, what's next?
What are you doing?
The home counties.
Pardon?
I thought I'd start with the home counties. Why have you stopped?
It's a little distracting.
Really?
A little, darling.
Oh, I thought, well, dearest, I need to say,
I don't suppose you could explain why.
we were told to lie back and think of England. I thought I'd start with the home counties.
Oh, darling, do you have to do it aloud?
Oh, no, I don't suppose so.
Ernestine decided she'd have nothing to do with gentlemen. They were nothing but trouble. She saw no purpose in turning out the lights to play I Spy or geography games or whatever. Georgina had married the first man she'd come across and was currently doing whatever it was that she was doing. And silly Charlotte, well, the less said about her predilection for cadets, the better. No, Ernestine had fallen in love with Peter, and Ernestine sat bolt upright.
Arthur, what was that?
Nothing, darling.
Oh, dearest.
I thought I heard something too.
Please, Arthur, I'm working up the Pennines.
She'd gone and fallen in love with Peter. It was stunningly obvious. Of all the stupid things for her to have gone and done.
Norfolk? Suffolk? Fuck?
I'm going to them, darling.
Staffordshire! Rutland! Riding!
Yes,
Riding! Bring her!
The two on the bed let out long sighs, and there was a great deal of bedclothes. Perhaps, thought Ernestine, she could wait until they all sleep and then sneak out quietly.
Arthur, dearest,
Yes, my darling.
I've just thought of some more counties. Mostly in the Midlands. Would you mind, my love?
Oh, of course, dear. If you just give me a few moments to recruit myself. Thank you.
No, but the next very slow.
No, we're not doing the chicken, but that joke already.
Thank you very much for being a lovely audience. Oh, questions, go on.
You just suddenly made me think. I haven't seen the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair, but it's on the very part of mobile phones. In the original one, he's got all the criminals to steal at exactly the right moment, and they all walk straight into the phone booth at exactly the right moment to pick up the phone to get the instructions. So suddenly in the remake, they've all got mobile phones.
Yeah,
It's just sort of lost
dull,
something,
isn't it?
hasn't it?
An awful lot of modern writing. They do a lot of info dumping, where they're just telling you stuff about the plot, but they're trying to make it exciting by having one person on the mobile phone running you through the screen or something. You know, it looks exciting, but afterwards you're unsatisfied. You don't know why, and that's why.
And the other thing that's interesting about it is there are certain, I mean, sort of collapse of society or whatever, but there are certain comparisons. If you think the Roman Empire existed for like 5 centuries, but towards the latter part of it, there was a much more, when the more barbarians came, a much more look at more primitive culture, because everybody was too fed up of staid conformity, and like things had perhaps reached a certain point, so they kind of looked backwards or to other cultures, and this is what makes me, you're wondering whether you think we've reached that point.
Yeah, or maybe we're looking back and we're saying, the Victorian times, well, we like the look of it, we like the big machines, we like stuff. Maybe the child prostitution we won't bother with. you pick the bits from history and say, we'll do that. Can you actually look back at the Second War and go, the fascists, they ran the trains quite well? Let's do that, but let's not do the gassing people thing.
No, antiseptic.
Sorry.
I suppose science fiction is uniquely placed to avoid this modern conundrum, because all you have to do is to outrage the communication devices. So in a near future science fiction, you would go deep into the solar system where you are not going to get Wikipedia or mobile phone system. And then therefore you're back onto your own resources and physical items to save the plot.
Yes, I think so. 2 hours to get a message somewhere.
Depends how advanced you are. Depends how advanced you are.
Civilization will always keep up with food, and then eventually the further outpaces civilization.
Well, if you look at the Victorian era, or, well, slightly before it, Napoleonic, which was the start of Victoria's reign, you had the fastest way to send a message was by transatlantic packet, which puts you in the same boat as it were, someone out, say, on Titan. But people in America did not have a lack of knowledge. They still had all the knowledge that our civilization had. So the guy on Titan may be out of range of his mobile phone, but he's still got his mobile Wikipedia with like 25 terabytes of information. So there's whilst you've still got a communications gap, you don't have that. Oh gosh, the thrall pin on the air plant's broken. What do I do?
No, you're completely right. You'll have all of knowledge, won't you? Maybe 4 hours out of date in current affairs, but as you say, you know how to fix the plan to be in your computer. Unless your computer goes down, then it's stuff.
Yeah, but as long as you say the hard
on my glasses.
Yes?
I'm just thinking in terms of pop construction in the present day, it can work
both ways, because when you would just assume you're going to have your mobile when you sat down or whatever. If for some reason they do pack up, then you are more in the soup than you would have been when you weren't relying on them. And for instance, if you sat down goes when you don't know where you are, you haven't got them back because you were relying on the sat nav, you are completely out of the country. So you can use that.
But can you use that? There was a period in history where the thing of my mobile phone doesn't have coverage, or I'm out of battery power, or I'm out of credit, kind of worked. But it doesn't work now. I know that happens in real life, but it's not believable in a narrative sense.
Why not?
I don't think.
It happens too often.
But it's overused. It's cliche.
It's a cliche like the blonde heroine walking up to the abandoned crossroads alone in the dark without a torch or a shotgun in a horror movie.
Yeah.
But isn't the adventure story itself a cliche?
Sorry?
Isn't the adventure story itself a cliche?
There are only 3, 7 or 31 stories, depending on which book you read.
Technology has undone some plot devices. So, as you say, you can't have the isolated house in the Bodleian Moors anymore because everybody's got bloody mobile phones. You can't go up outside a house and cut the phone line or whatever. But we have different things. Somebody has their fantastic device and somebody's changed their password. You can.
Of course.
And new things become available that weren't possible.
Absolutely.
New stories evolved to match the new technology.
With the new technology, a new set of infinite stories has turned up. But I would contend that the infinite set has gone down.
The quality has gone down.
Yeah, I mean, it's an arguable point, and I guess we have to come back in Armadacon 50 and have this debate again and see if there was anything in this.
Are we maybe waiting for the crime genre to sort it all out? Because mobile phones and DNA analysis and so on are screwing them up more than they are science fiction. And once they've got over that hump, we then can go, science fiction will, steal all your ideas and sail on to the future.
I think so. Yeah. I hope so.
Was there ever a golden age? I decided a few years ago to read a load of Agatha Christie, but I'd never read any. I thought this was because they had golden age. And I read through it, got to the end of the first one, thought, well, I never saw that coming. Then I read another one, and then I said, hang on a minute, the clue was that the shoelaces were mistied. I don't remember that, and I flipped back. And in the description of the body, there's nothing about the shoelace. And then I read another one, and you had to know that the person had been previously married, which Miss Marple knew because she'd gone off to London for 3 days and gone to Somerset House, hadn't bothered telling the reader. So, I think the golden age is a bit brassy in places.
It's interesting that the first detective story is supposed to be Edgar Allan Poe's Murder of the Law. And in the first Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes story, he has a dig. Sherlock Holmes says, well, the stuff in fiction is a load of rubbish. This is how it's supposed to work. And in one of the Agatha Christie Poirot books, Poirot has a go at Sherlock Holmes. Nonsense. So what you're saying is you need to write, I wonder if in Morse somewhere you have to go at Agatha Christie.
Yeah,
but the police attend to follow Sherlock Holmes' principles in their investigations, generally.
No, I've actually heard policemen speaking on the radio saying, we don't want any of this Sherlock Holmes nonsense here. Oh, you mean you're not solving crimes by careful examination?
Yes. When you have eliminated all the possibilities, you've overlooked something.
A point about relying on technology. I forget which particular terrible James Bond film it was. It starts with a British frigate sailing into Chinese waters because someone has hacked sat-navs. Any British naval officer who did not take regular sun sights would have his commission taken away so fast you would have track marks on his shoulders.
But the script was written by the man. How accurate you thought. Was it? That's a good story idea.
How do you feel about the Crystal Palace maybe being rebuilt? The rebuilding of Crystal Palace. get done for that money.
Quick question, going slightly different.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the? We've had a thing about Agatha Christie where she doesn't actually reference something earlier in the book, which is later relied on to solve the mystery. Do you actually look to seed the solution, or do you think that's actually a
I
good narrative or not?
really do believe in that if you're going to talk about untied shoelaces, you've got to mention them earlier on. I am an absolute convert to Aristotle in, I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, I'm going to read everything I'm going to say tomorrow. I really believe in Aristotle. You want to know about writing, that's the book to read. He wrote 2 books, Poetics 1 and Poetics 2. Everything you need to know about writing is in Poetics 1. 3-act structure, character arcs. He goes on and on about the modern use of Deus Ex Machina. Absolutely really rants about it. He does say there should be more liar playing in theatre. Put that out there for you to go. And yes, you know, there's a paragraph about the beginning, middle, and end. It's all this Act 3 business comes from. There's no such thing as 3-act structure. I think that's a nonsense. There's beginning, middle, and end. And I think in the beginning you must lay out your stall. You must say, this is the technology I'm going to use, these are the block devices I'm going to use, all the elements must be mentioned in your beginning. And then you play with them, and then you resolve everything. So, for example, it's important for me in my first chapter to say, steam engines, we have Zeppelins, we have zombies. I'm not going to introduce anything else. You're okay, and I will play.
It's interesting because of, I mean, one time I wasn't a particular fan of Star Wars. And George Lucas just throws anything in.
Yeah.
And it starts saying over here about plot devices and shoelaces. But if you take the film Aliens, the bulk airlock that Ripley flushes the mother alien out, if you watch carefully when they're working around the deck, you actually physically see that in the scene. So it's already firmly in the subconscious, and it's what you're saying. You're using everything that has been put in there. George Lucas just throws it in as he wants to, and yet somehow that works.
Can you ask me this question tomorrow?
Yeah.
I have a really good answer for it, but I don't have my bits and pieces with me. No doubt. But yeah, I do believe in I think Agatha Christie is actually pretty honest. I've not read Marple, I've only read Poirot.
She's far more honest than Conan Doyle.
Yeah, well, Conan Doyle's dreadful.
He's a cheat. Well, you didn't notice, Watson, and neither did the reader.
That's a little strange thing about the dog in the night.
In Sherlock Holmes, there's a little scene about 2/3 of the way through where Sherlock Holmes goes off and sends a telegram. And then you carry on with the story, blah, blah, blah. And then a little while later, somebody comes and gives him a telegram. And he opens the telegram, and he might put that in his pocket and save it for later, or he might just go, ha-ha! And he's sent off for some piece of information that comes back, and he can now say that so-and-so is related to Moriarty and didn't tie their shoelaces up or something. It's an utter cheat. It is a Deus Ex Machina. It comes from nowhere. And it's naughty. We shouldn't do it again.
With your setting being steam, I'll admit I'm not really familiar with the genre. The only novel I've read is Clockwork Fate, which goes on about working a very large mechanical computer and the fact that the children working it end up with bits missing because of the cogs. How do you feel about introducing things from the Victorian era that our modern sensibilities would be unhappy with, like child labour and racism, mutilation, lack of a national health service, that sort of thing? Or is that a plot device in itself for a book?
Every story set in ancient Rome, the main character has 2 traits. The first trait is that they're always pro-republican. It's a great thing to give your main character. Ideals, it gives you a bit of conflict with the imperialists. It's a beautiful thing to bring out character and give you a bit of story. The second thing is they're always anti-slavery, which is nonsense. Yeah. Nobody in that period was anti-slavery. It's just gibberish. It was a career path for educated Greeks to sell themselves into slavery in order to become Roman citizens. Spartacus went involved, not to get rid of slavery. He just wanted to be a master and everybody else was a slave. So if you're talking about Victorian times, to my mind, you've got to be true to that era. I don't mind somebody writing a parallel world story where that's not the case. But I think we need to make that clear. But for me, one of the delights of writing this book is my heroines are competent, but they have their sensibilities of Victorian young ladies, and they want to get married. You can argue that that's sexist, but it is. But at the time, that was the only thing they could do, wasn't it? So to just brush that aside or give them modern attitudes.
And the mindset of the Victorians, yeah.
Mindset of Victorians. You want your heroes to be unusual characters, I suppose, after all. They're heroes, after all. But I do think I've slightly lost what your question was.
No, I think you've answered it, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
So you wouldn't be opposed to actually putting a female character slightly out of kilter within your content? So you would allow a female to be a doctor, or so long as they actually have the archetypal female needs?
I've got a female doctor, isn't it?
There were female doctors.
Yes, it was never actually illegal for women not to be doctors.
No, absolutely.
But social pressure forced them out.
Exactly. Something I'm doing at the moment is
Yeah.
actually has a female doctor. I've been told that there wouldn't be a doctor in that period.
I have a female doctor. She is brilliant. She has been forced from Edinburgh because she's not allowed to go into the anatomy room, and she's got a severe chip on her shoulder about it. To my mind, that is what those characters would be like. You couldn't be a female doctor and be accepting of the establishment, because the establishment was rejecting you. Now, of course, you could do a steampunk story where there was equality of the sexes, but I chose not to do that. I suppose mine's slightly steampunk, changed just one or two things. Well, it's that SF thing, isn't it? You're allowed to change one thing, and you must stick with that. The exception of the rule being Day of the Ship, isn't it? Doctor 2, what if thing? What if everyone was blind and or killer plants? It's a bit of a stretch, that. You go all over them.
Perambulating killer plants.
Anything else?
What's the next one?
Oh, I've got 3 planned so far. I've written the first draft of the second one, and it was really interesting. I think being one book ahead is the way to do it. Like, I'm going to write the first draft of the third one, and then do like the second one. And I definitely found myself going, oh, I need to mention this in the first book. Oh, I need to mention this in the first book.
Is there going to be any more sex comedy in the second one?
It went down well, so yeah. So I know what my audience wants now.
Smut.
You put the other two in drugs and rock and roll.
Sorry?
You put the other two in drugs and rock and roll.
Well, yeah,
Well,
drugs is around at the time.
Yeah.
And of course, if
it's
you
a
think
string
about
quartet.
it, Brahms and Liszt were the first 2 composers actually to have groupies. Ooh. Women followed them across Europe.
Yes, you're right.
They followed Kelly across Europe.
Oh, yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, thank you very much for putting up with me, and obviously come back with that question tomorrow.